Thank you for being here, and welcome to Community Conversation number 2 about the Poverello Center location. I'm really interested to hear how many, or see how many of you were here for Community Conversation number 1 back in August. Look around and just look at each other. So, okay. So there were probably a little more than half of you were here at Community Conversation number 1. And Community Conversation number 2 does build on number 1. You're not going to get all the information repeated, but that information, a lot of basic information about the Poverello Center and their services and their history is on the city's website. And so you can go get that if you have questions after this. My name is Kristina Swanson, and I work with the National Coalition Building Institute as a facilitator. I have some experience working with the issue of homelessness as a program, doing direct services with people and families who are homeless, and also as an administrator of funding and programs for people who are homeless. Right now I'm doing something completely different, so I'm just a neutral facilitator. This is Ami Thurber, who's my co-facilitator.
Hello, I'm Ami. I'm the director of the National Coalition Building Institute in Missoula, and I'm really happy to be back with you all this evening.
Okay, so we've been working on a process, the Poverello Center and the community as partners, and a lot of representatives from a lot of diverse interests have been working together to vet criteria for a site for a Poverello Center, either a new site or possibly the current site. There have been a lot of different sites that have been considered, and there's a big process that you'll hear more about later in this meeting. And it's been a very meaningful process. There's been a lot of engagement and feedback from those of you in this room and a lot of other people, and it's been really great. The first meeting, about 200 people met and came up with criteria for a Poverello Center site. And a work group has been meeting since then to vet those criteria and come up with site recommendations, which you're going to hear more about tonight. And Ami will describe in greater detail what the work of that work group was. I have some big thank yous. Thank you to the City of Missoula and United Way, who gave financial support and logistical support for this process. The Office of Planning and Grants also has given a lot of logistical support. I want to thank the First United Methodist Church, who let us use this space, and St. Patrick's Hospital let us use the conference space for the first meeting. I especially want to thank the Poverello Center for engaging this community process and these questions while they're simultaneously running their very important shelter and kitchen services to more than 100 people every day. And they're doing this too. So they've really done a lot to make sure that the questions that you have are answered. There was a big list of questions that was generated in the first community conversation, and the Poverello Center, within a week or so, answered all of those questions, and those questions and answers are posted on the city's website. A lot of other people have been working on this process: neighbors, the City of Missoula, POV, local businesses, and nonprofits have all been engaged in this process and spend a lot of time. Tonight, what we're going to be doing, our agenda is, first, we'll bring you up to speed about what the work group has done. The work group is going to share sites that they are recommending and the pros and cons for each site. You are going to have the opportunity to give your feedback about the sites, and we're going to give an overview of what comes next. The Poverello Center is going to take the information gathered through this whole process, and they're going to make a decision. And Erin from the Poverello Center will talk more in detail about what their next steps are going to be. This is not your last chance to have input in this process. This is the last community conversation that we have planned right now that engages the whole community, but there will be many other opportunities for you to engage as the POV goes through the process of improving its site. I want to tell you a little bit about the National Coalition Building Institute. The city contracted with NCBI to manage this process, and Ami actually is the person who has been facilitating the whole process. NCBI is an international organization that does prejudice reduction, violence prevention, facilitates dispute resolution in locations all around the country and all around the world. So we have a few working assumptions that we're going to go with tonight. And I'm going to go through those real quick. And they're also on the PowerPoint back there. Homelessness is a key community concern. The Poverello Center serves critical needs in Missoula. Diverse community interests must be heard and considered in determining how and where those needs are met. More community education is needed about homelessness in general and about who the Poverello serves and what services they provide. So we're here to engage the conversation about what will be addressed in any location where the Poverello ends up, not to talk about whether or not there should be a Poverello Center. I wanted to tell you too that this, if you didn't come to the first meeting, this is a facilitated meeting. It's not an open forum for public comment. So what that means is that we understand that you all are here because you have interests and opinions and feelings and strong thoughts that you want to express. And so we're going to have a facilitated conversation and some facilitated activities in which you'll have an opportunity to express those thoughts. We're going to have to move things along tonight. We have an ambitious agenda, and we're trying to put a lot into this 3 hours that we're going to spend together. So if you have something to say and it doesn't fit into our activities, there are people with gray shirts around the room. Most of them are in the back, some of them are sitting down. Those people in gray shirts are NCBI facilitators. They're trained listeners, and they want to hear what you have to say. And so if you have a burning desire to say something, it doesn't fit into our activities, you're welcome to seek any of those folks out anytime tonight and talk to them. They will document your concern, and it will get back to the work group at the Poverello Center. There was one other thing. I don't see a question, a sheet for this. Oh, okay. Also, oh yeah, okay, so there's a couple of sheets on the walls back there. If you have questions that are not answered by tonight's stuff, then you can write them on the wall. And once again, the Poverello Center will, as quickly as possible, post the answers to those questions on the city website. There's no break tonight formally, so please just take care of your needs as you need to. The bathrooms are out that back door and around the corner. I'm going to give us a couple of guidelines so that we can make agreements that will be help to set a foundation for constructive dialogue. First one is self-focus. Just pay attention to what's going on with you. Pay attention to your thoughts and your feelings and what kind of energy you're bringing into the conversation. Be respectful. We're all good people. That is a basic assumption here. We're all good people. We all have something valuable to offer. We're not going to all agree, but we can still listen to each other. Listening isn't the same as agreeing, so we can listen even if we disagree. Reach for honesty. This is your chance to say what you think about this. You came here for a reason, so be willing to take that risk and tell your truth. Tell your truth, whatever it is. Use personalized knowledge. Speak for yourself. Try not to speak for your family or your friends or your neighbors or a group of people that you're affiliated with. Just speak for yourself tonight. Listen for understanding. Listen with the idea that you might learn something new, that you might hear something you haven't heard before, and you can take that in. There's a listening continuum that can help us think about how to listen and get to a place where we can have understanding and agree. We can start on one end of the listening continuum where we're blaming, we're judging, we're attacking, not really open to the other side or other points of view. We get into the middle of the continuum where we're able to listen and understand other points of view. And then at the other end of the continuum is setting and acting on common goals. And that's what we want to do, is identify where we have common interests and be able to act on that and give the Poverello the tools they need to do the work they have to do. So, I'm going to ask you for just 1 short minute to turn to someone beside you and each take a turn and say, what is your biggest question that you came here with tonight, or your biggest concern, top 1 question or concern? I'll just have you go ahead and speak to each other, and then I'll tell you when to stop. So we hope that today we'll answer many of the questions that you have. We will not probably answer all of your questions. Please put them on the board. If you have them, talk to the gray-shirted people, and here we go. Thank you again for being here tonight.
Okay, so first thing that we want to do is just bring you up to speed on what's happened since the last community meeting. And so how did we get to where we are now? Well, at last month's meeting, one of the first things we did is we heard from the Poverello Center about why they need a new facility. And again, Erin, the director of the POV's comments are all on the city's website. So you can, if you haven't read that or you weren't here, I encourage you to. So that was important for us to hear, why they need a new facility. And we heard that they've been looking for a new facility for a number of years at this point. And so they've been on this road for some time. That included working with the city intensively, working with some other community partners, but as the mayor shared last month, it did not include working with the community as a whole, and until this time. And I want to especially thank the North and West Side neighbors for demonstrating that neighbors can and should be engaged with in a process like this. And so here's to neighbors asking to be engaged. Okay? So since then, we heard from the POV, what do they need? And they said the basic criteria from their standpoint is a facility that's adequately sized, that's available, like on the market and affordable, that's appropriately zoned, and that's located within a neighborhood where there's financial need, where there's people who need help with housing and shelter. Then we asked all of you who were here to break into stakeholder groups as neighbors, as business owners, as Poverello clients or staff or volunteers, or as city folks or our partner agencies to identify, well, what concerns do you need to see addressed in any new site? And we took all of that and used that to inform a set of criteria that I'm going to talk a little bit more about in a minute. After last month's meeting, we formed a work group, and that work group included 3 people from the city, 3 people from the business community, 3 from the neighborhoods, and 3 from the Poverello Center. And I want to take a moment to introduce that work group to you. So will all the work group members come up, please? I'm just going to have them just go down the line, introduce themselves to you, and share, their connection to this and what sector they're representing.
I'm Dan Cedarberg, and I was a business member, and I was appointed by the Missoula Downtown Association.
Good evening. My name's Dave Hadley. I was one of 3 people from the Poverello Center. In my case, because I was a resident there for about 10 months.
I'm Bob Frankie, and I was chosen to represent the city of Missoula and the Missoula Police Department.
I'm Erin Fowler, and I was participating representing the Poverello Center.
I'm Ann Murphy. I'm on the board of directors of the POV, also representing the POV.
Patty Murphy, business nonprofit.
Mike Barton, I'm with the Office of Planning and Grants and was appointed as a representative of the city.
I'm Jack Chambers, and I was appointed as a representative of the Missoula Chamber of Commerce.
I'm Amy Capilupo, and I was appointed to represent the Heart of Missoula neighborhood.
I'm Jed Little, representing the West Side and North Side neighborhood. I'm Jenny Merriam. I work for the city as communications director, so I'm representing the city.
And I just want to acknowledge that there's also Patricia Hogan, who was representing the neighborhood association as well, who's home with a migraine tonight, but she's been a very active member of the group. And this group of 12 has worked incredibly hard in the last very short amount of time, since over the last 3 weeks. We met for 3 weeks for 3.5-hour meetings each week. Many of them met outside of those meetings with their neighbors, with their business community. Some of them took tours with their other neighbor members of the possible sites. They really put in a ton of time and energy, and I'd like to acknowledge their work. Thank you. So one of the first steps that the work group took was to take all of the concerns that had come out of last month's meeting and create some sort of a tool that would be used to evaluate sites. And we did this by doing, move your head in the way a little bit. You don't have to go down, it's over. I know that it's hard to see, so I'll say what's up here. We first divided into basically 2 basic categories. There are what we call positive adjacencies, which are things that you would want to have as neighbors or to have around a location for the POV, which would be people who need their services, right? So you want to maximize your proximity to people who need the services. You want to be close to other partner services, and you want to be close to emergency services, medical, etc. So if there's people who have a crisis, that you have access to those. So the positive adjacencies were those general categories. Negative adjacencies, we want to look at how close is a site to residents, to businesses, to public gathering places, and how can we minimize those adjacencies. So within those 6 big questions, we looked at a lot of individual detail. For instance, and in the back there's a handout that looks something like this, and I encourage you to grab one later. We have data on, what is the income in different neighborhoods, and we were able to look at, for the different sites that the work group checked out, well, what is the income level in the neighborhood around that site? The POV operates a soup kitchen that currently serves something like 300 meals a day, and the people who are accessing that are people who can often get there by foot. So are there people in the neighborhood who could use their services? In terms of partner services, we looked at things, everything from how far is it to the bus transfer station, to how far is it to the Partnership Health Center, to the state offices, the Veterans Office. In terms of proximity to emergency services, we looked at distances to medical, law enforcement, the Salvation Army, the YWCA, which provides also some emergency services. And then in terms of the negative adjacencies, we looked at trying to get, again, as specific data as we could. How many people live within 350 feet and 1,500 feet of this proposed site? How many businesses are, adjacent to this site? Looking at the types of businesses. And we also, one of the concerns that came out of the last meeting was around, particularly from the North and West Side neighborhood, saying we have a large number of registered sex offenders in our neighborhood right now, and we're concerned about adding more into a neighborhood that's already at risk. And so we looked at how many sex offenders are registered within certain proximity of each of these sites. So we tried to take as many of the things we heard as concerns and get quantifiable data to be able to evaluate the sites. And that everything that was gathered is on this sheet that's available for you to check out. And again, it's on a table in the back, and we're going to break to hear more in a little bit, and you can grab one of those. So I'm going to get myself clear here. So we gathered that data, and then we applied the tool to the sites that were available. And at this point, I want to invite up John Wells, who has been working with the Poverello Center, to explain how we weeded down the list. And what I'll say is that at last month's meeting, we had sheets in the back. We said, if you have a recommended site, write it down. And there were 30-something sites that were written down. And so John's going to talk through what happened with that list.
So this process This process is, the searching for a new site's been going on for some time, about 3 years. We've been looking for quite a while. We already had a pretty good bank of available sites that we knew of that we've been looking at. So we started with that and then opened it up for suggestions. Every site that was written down at the back of the meeting last time, every site that was suggested online was put on a list, and we started going through and weeding them out. We got down to a list of about 31. There were a number of sites that where folks approached us and said would like to be considered but didn't want to be part of the public process. And we owe it to the community to include it in the public process, so we ruled those out immediately. So of the 31 that were willing to be acknowledged, 11 of them were not available. We looked into every property on the list, whether it was listed or not listed, to find out if it was available. And some of the properties turned out, one of the properties that was vetted turned out to be one that was not listed for sale. So that got us down to 20. 10 of them weren't affordable. We had a pretty good idea of the guidelines of how much we can afford. And it was pretty easy to rule out 10 of them. We didn't do any of this lightly. We just took the ones that were obviously beyond the pale. That got us down to 10. 2 were just too small, 2 were improperly zoned, 1 wasn't accessible to clients or client services. So that got us down to the 5 that were considered. It would have been very nice if there were more that we could consider. We were certainly hoping for more. We're always looking for the perfect site. And we know that it's out there somewhere. But we know that it's a lot of work to go through and to vet all these. And we wanted to make sure that the ones that were being considered were ones that had a fair shot of the POV actually going there. I guess that's about it.
Thanks, John. So the work group got this list of 5 sites, and they did a number of things. Let me go to the next slide. The 5 sites that we were initially presented with are the 5 up here. So the first is the current POV location with the addition of some of the county land that's adjacent to that. That's where the county print shop currently is and the parking lots around that. A second one that was, well, actually there's an error on this, so I'll just verbally tell you. Second site that they looked at was the site of the 316 Mission, which is on right by the pedestrian footbridge, if you can visualize where that is. A third site was on Sherwood, where adjacent to the Saratana Studios, for those of you who are familiar with where that is in the West Side neighborhood. A fourth was on Broadway at the Trails End and Osprey Nest facility. That's a dual piece of property there. Two different businesses have been there, but it's the same piece of property. And then the fifth site was immediately across the street from that, and it was a Goofy's gas station GMT engineering site. And you can move to the next slide. So of those 5, what the work group did is they went on a tour of all 5 sites. They got to hear the pros and cons of the sites from all the work group perspectives. So for instance, we had Bob Franke from the police department who was talking about safety and accessibility for emergency services. We had neighbors talking about proximity to parks and schools and residents. We had business folks giving their perspective about proximity to businesses and impact. We also looked at the hard data, the numbers that we had gathered. And we deliberated amongst ourselves, and based on that process, we ruled out 2 of them. The work group decided that 2 of those 5 sites didn't actually sufficiently meet the criteria that came out of last month's meeting. And that was the Sherwood site, the one across from Saratana Studios, and the 316 Mission site. And the reasons for both why they were ruled out are very similar. They both are located in such a way that they're less accessible to clients. They're not as accessible to clients and client services in terms of being close to the bus transfer station, easy to get to. They're not accessible to emergency services, so we heard from Bob that it's hard for ambulance and police to respond in those locations. And they're also not, they're deeper in residential neighborhoods. They have a bigger foot traffic impact on residents, which was something that everybody wanted to minimize. So those 2 sites were not recommended for further consideration. The work group decided to recommend these 3 sites for further consideration. And that's the Ryman, the current location with the addition of the county land, the site that's, it says Osprey Nest here, but it's the Osprey Nest and Trails End together site. And then the GMT Consultants, which most people don't know what that is, but that's a site directly across the street, Broadway, where the old Goofy's Gas used to be. Okay? So those are the 3 sites that they recommended. And what I would say is that the work group, that group of 12 is a very diverse group. They have very diverse perspectives, and they reached consensus that the 2 sites that they have excluded did not meet criteria, and the 3 sites that they are bringing forward here did meet the basic criteria. Now, if you were to ask each of them individually if they have a favorite, they all have a favorite, I'm sure. Some of them told us what their favorites were and some kept it to themselves, but I'm sure they all have one. And I think from my perspective, what's important is that we reached consensus that all 3 of these should be brought to the community for further deliberation. And so what's going to happen next is that we're going to have a chance for you all to learn more about the 3 sites, what they identified as the strengths of those sites and what they identified as the challenges of those sites. And there are strengths and challenges to each site. We're going to basically divide all of you into 3 groups, so you have the chance to share input in a more intimate setting. It'll still be big groups, but at least you'll get to have, more people get to have their voices heard. And we're going to, it's all going to be on this lower level. So a third of you are going to stay here. A third of you are going to go straight through the sliding door back there. And then a third are going to go into a lounge area just out to my right. And what will happen in those groups is you're going to have a relatively, a very highly facilitated amount of time, tightly facilitated amount of time, about a half hour in each group, where you're going to get to hear from the work group members a presentation about the site. You're going to get to ask questions of those work group members if there's things that you wonder about the site. You're going to get to share what you like about the site, and you share what your concerns are. And what I'll say is it's really important for people to share what they like about the site and what your concerns are, because the POV is ultimately not going to be choosing where the facility should not go. They're going to be choosing where it should go. And so they need to know what site is best suited for the Poverello Center and for their facility. What I will say is that there will be a facilitator in each group and a scribe who will be writing down all of your concerns. All of those will get typed up and go back to the POV. And your facilitator, their job is to make sure as many people as possible get to share their questions, concerns. And so that means we're asking that nobody speak twice in your small group before everybody's had the chance to speak once. Just to try and give as many people as possible a chance to participate. They're going to need your help in staying on time, and the way we're setting this up is that once we divide into 3 spaces, you're going to stay put, but the facilitators are going to rotate. So when they say it's time to go because they have to go to another room and present to somebody else, and somebody else will come to you. Does that make some sense? Okay. So, did I miss anything?
I think you're good.
Okay. What I just want to emphasize is that we're, again, designing this in a way to give as many of you the chance to participate as possible, and we know that not everyone is going to get to share everything they want to share tonight. And we encourage you to use the other means of communication that we've laid out, putting questions up on the question board, using the website, on the city's website, there's a way to send messages that go directly to the POV. Remember that this is not your only opportunity to be heard, and use the other avenues if there are concerns, questions, ideas that you still have at the end of this process. After we break them into 3 groups and you get to hear about all 3 sites, everybody will come back to this room, and Erin from the POV will give you an overview of what's going to happen next and what the next steps are in the process. So now I'm going to figure out how to divide you into 3. And I have a thought about it. Sorry, TV people that I knew. Do you have that? There's about 10, 20. Okay. So you see these pillars here? Everybody from this side of pillars forward is going to stay put. Okay?
And after you get a chance to hear their presentation, that will be the question time. And because we have an ambitious time frame here, we are going to ask that you ask questions. We're going to keep it really tight, and we're going to ask that one person gets a chance to ask a question before another person gets to ask their second question. Just make sure everyone gets a chance to have their voice heard. After the question and answer section, if by chance there's a question that we can't answer, the work group can't answer, we'll write that down and share that with the Poverello. Then we're going to have a chance to hear what you're highlighting the strengths of this location, and then we're going to hear your concerns about this particular location. So I would like to introduce our work group for this section right now. We have Jed and Dave and Mike. So thank you, and we'll just hear what they have to share with us.
Okay, I'm Mike Barton, and I'll quickly describe this so you can chime in here. This is probably the easiest one to describe because it's where the POV is now. And what's being considered is the current site with the possibility of additional ground of about the same size as the Poverello's current lot gained from the county or the neighbor immediately to the north. And the county is definitely engaged in conversations and negotiations with the Poverello about the possibility of using county ground here. The strengths, it is obviously very close to the client base and to services. The neighborhood with the greatest number of, with the greatest incidence of poverty in our city is the downtown neighborhood, the census block group in which the Poverello is located. It was also very clear from the discussions that some of the most important services for residents at the Poverello are the transit center as a means to get to employment and other services, and the Partnership Health Center, which is a block and a half away. So again, very close to services. It's also extremely close to emergency services. The other thing about the other strength in this site is that it is not disruptive of anything that's going on now. It is status quo, so it doesn't raise a profile necessarily, nor does it lessen one, which is the flip side of that. So, and a segue to the challenges, because one challenge is the continuing challenge that the downtown businesses have with homeless and the concentration there. And the other one is the very strong identification between the Poverello residents in particular and homeless street people in general. Right now, on any given night in this town, there are probably 500 people homeless. Now, some of those are couch surfing, and some of those are in cars, and some of those will wind up in doorways downtown or in camps. 70 are at the Poverello, just to put things in perspective. So that was what the work group looked at here, found that this site should be recommended to the Poverello, that the Poverello should pursue discussion. And we'll open it up to you, Heidi.
For questions. Okay, so we'll just raise your hand if you have a question.
Yes, I do. I have an excellent idea. I live on 1402 Sherwood. It was remodeled, and before I came there, it was kind of a dump. And they remodeled it into something wonderful, incredible. Now, we want to help, the Poverello clients and the homeless. Now, I don't understand why we couldn't remodel that whole place and in the process for the money that we're spending on remodeling it to really make it good, because you should see the 1402 Sherwood that I live. Now it's a garden. It used to be a dump.
And so your question is?
We could pay the Poverello clients to help remodel the place, bring it up to code, and give them a good day's work for a good day's pay, teach them a job, and help them to get off the streets. 2 birds with 1 stone.
Thank you for
Thank
your
you.
question. I'm not sure that we need an answer for that.
Just to point out in terms of information that the Poverello does need something, needs a location about twice the size of its current lot.
Amen.
Right, and one of the reasons for that is to buffer and accommodate some of the concerns that neighbors have had.
So to that, with the lot that the Missoula textile trucks park in, and the print shop, and the lot behind the print shop that I think is getting out, would that be a properly sized parcel? And is all of that able to be purchased?
The county's already entered into some discussions with the POV about what could be possible. The county owns 3 lots of the 5 that make up that half block. And so the county has more than the single possibility of the print shop and is considering some flexibility on its larger site.
Yeah, the lot that's directly adjacent though, where the Missoula textile trucks park, is that getting out?
It is not.
Okay.
Can I add on to that too? What the POV has said their needs are in terms of space is 20,000 square feet of grounds and 20,000 square feet of building. Their current parcel is 10,000 square feet, is that?
20,000 feet of ground. They need about the same size building.
Right.
Yeah.
So the plan is, they currently have 10,000 square feet. The county print shop would be an additional 10,000 square feet. By building up, they can get the building they need on that county print shop footprint, and then have the current location to use for outside space or parking or other facilities. So with those 2 parcels, which would form kind of an L-shaped parcel, they would have adequate space for what they say they need.
Are there many legal barriers to getting a section parcel? What are the barriers to getting a section parcel?
I mean, the biggest barrier is the county commissioners need to agree to it, and I don't know what process they have to go.
And the county commissioners have asked their attorney to look into the mechanisms that would need to be used to facilitate a sale or an exchange or a long-term lease. They're looking at a number of options, I know.
Will this site be large enough to last, let's say, for the next 5 to 10 years? And what will happen to the residents that are currently in the old site while the new one is being built?
The idea would be the current facility would continue to run while the new facility is being built on the county print shop site. And the Poverello believes that they're asking for the space that they will need, so.
But will it be enough?
Future growth.
Yeah.
For the future growth.
I mean, I can't speak for the POV, but I don't think they would go into this process without asking for the amount of space that they truly need.
Keep in mind, however, that the Poverello does not serve the entirety of our homeless population, and most likely never will.
John, is there a number on this in terms of a 30-year plan or a 40-year plan?
So we're looking at those projections.
I'm sorry, how?
20.
20, okay, thank you.
I have a question, sort of comment, maybe Mike, you can answer this, I don't know, being a city planner, but one of the main justifications that we have right now of moving the Poverello from its current site downtown into potentially a neighborhood is to make this separation between this potential so-called 11% of individuals who are giving the POV a bad name and supposedly aren't using the facility. So my question is, A, what evidence do we have, because it is an anonymous facility, do we have that these individuals are not using the current POV downtown? What evidence do we have that shows that the 11% of hardcore homeless who are not POV clients will really stay downtown? And what impact will moving the hub of social services for the homeless population 3/4 of a mile from its current facility have into a neighborhood where there's a school, families, and children? Do we really know
Wait a
in a
minute,
planning perspective?
we're talking this site.
I know, so I'm
Right.
saying, why wouldn't we stay here? I mean, do we know?
So you're suggesting that as a positive?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm asking what evidence or what studies have been done when researching homeless shelters and where the most appropriate location is for them. What is that impact? How far does that impact reach out, and what will it have moving it from its current site where this is a known place? This is a known place where people go for services, and when you move that hub, what does that impact have on the travel of all the individuals that are utilizing those services? Do we know? Does anyone know?
Well, I think that I heard some strengths in that for this location in your comments there, and that could be a question that we want to say to give to the Poverello directly, or maybe when we go to the next two sites, the West Broadway sites, they might be able to clearly answer that better.
Because those are the ones, obviously, where it would, that hub would move. In regard to your first
Yeah, I guess
question,
I'm asking you because you're a planner and maybe you look at these broader issues when we're trying to look at a holistic community and what is balanced and healthy for a community at large. I assume that's kind of how we look at city planning, or I'd like to.
well, that's kind of how we look at utopia, but
Yeah, and I want to live in utopia.
Me too.
I think it was simple that way.
Sir? Did you have your hand up?
I would just sort of like to dovetail with what this young lady has suggested. After the last meeting, about a month ago, I called one of the facilitators the next morning and said what a great job they did, but at the same time I said, the best site is basically on the present site with the use of the county print shop and parking lot. At first, there was some concern that the county didn't own it, but they do. So, in following that up, I had a short phone conversation with one of the 3 county commissioners today, and I just asked the question, please don't BS me. Just tell me, is this a doable deal as far as the county is concerned? And that county commissioner says, we have things that we're working on, but yes, it could go forward. So the whole issue of why move, the present POV could provide the facility that it does now for the next year or year and a half while the new building is being built. That could be torn down. That land could be utilized by the POV as far as courtyards and kiosks and benches and tables and so forth. And all of the issues that were raised at the last meeting, the issues about doing something somewhere else and somewhere else, all of those issues go away on this one, except with the exception of the present businesses that are down there that would probably rather see the POV go somewhere else.
So we're just segueing into a little bit of strength. So let's hear a couple more questions.
My question is, why wouldn't you want to have the facility in the same spot? What are the cons? Like, why wouldn't you remodel or rebuild, or why wouldn't you use that county property?
I think the main point at this time is, can we buy it, and is it a price that we can work with? And I'm with you 100% on that.
I do have a question. Are you going to build a hotel down there?
Oh, don't ask me. I'm not building anything.
There's not enough rooms. There's all kinds of people that don't have a place to live right now tonight that go to the pub and they're there about a month or something. They got to leave and they got no place to live. So is there going to be enough, are you going to build it high? Is that the plan in this area?
It's going to have the same 70
it will
beds.
have the same number of beds, as my understanding, as currently, although there will be more flexibility in how space can be used in emergency situations, like, in the very cold weather. So if they need to, the Poverello does institute emergency measures when when it gets very cold to allow people in that it would not ordinarily allow.
And it should be noted that Bob is, planning on building the same type and size facility no matter where they end up. That's what they've projected that they can handle and do, and that's all they're asking for.
So I have this question and then your question, and then if you didn't get a chance to share your questions, we have the boards in the back, and then we'll go to the strengths and the challenges.
I have two quick questions. One just popped up. I was under the assumption that Bob was going to expand in size, both in square footage and in the nets. That was, even from the first meeting we had, I heard the number 100 beds thrown around.
I think there would be capacity for 100, yes, but that and I'm looking to, Kate was there a minute ago, but.
I'm still here. I'm back here to get some perspective.
So the idea was they would continue at their current capacity, but would have some flexible space where now they can't sleep people.
So now what's the absolute maximum bed space in an emergency situation?
I don't.
We don't know.
Right.
So seemingly they're going to have the same number of beds with perhaps a little more emergency bed space, but more community common area. Is that what they're looking for?
Yes.
Okay. My second question is how is the number of homeless people in Missoula reached? How do you get to 500?
It's counted annually. There's an annual.
How are we counting those people?
Much the same way that the census does.
Is that effective?
No, that's true.
Well, I mean, we're able to count 500.
They counted 984 at the January 26th point in time survey.
And how,
okay, thank you.
How do you count the homeless people? If they're couch surfing, how are you counting them? If they're just in town for a couple of weeks, how are you counting them?
Is the homeless count done in conjunction with the? There is a day where services are set up, and there is outreach done to attempt to contact as many homeless persons as possible. But it includes going out to some of the camps, and and so it is a coordinated effort to get out in one day and count as close as we can.
Search all over this.
So, final question for this little section.
Can you share with the group the number of residents that live adjacent to the 3 locations in whatever that distance was, 4 blocks, 1,500 feet? And would development of a new Poverello on this site preclude development of the proposed parking structure as called for in the downtown master plan?
B, I don't think it precludes the construction of a parking lot, of a parking garage, and a parking structure, I think, is the first one.
How many residents?
The number of residents in the
Is that not on the?
It is on here, yes.
So you're asking how did they get that number?
No, I'm suggesting that there's a misperception about how many residents live adjacent to the current location as opposed to how many residents live within the 4-block stretch of the other locations.
Why is that, ma'am?
It may not be something we can answer. There's a discrepancy.
Okay, so let me point out that according to the document, residents within a 4-block area of the current location is 1,488 residents. That's more residents in a 4-block area surrounding the current location than the 1,255 residents that are within 4 blocks of the 2 West Broadway locations. I was suggesting that I think there's a misperception about how many residents are in the downtown area and living close by the Ryman Street property.
We may not be able to answer that one in this time, but
It does not. It doesn't include.
So
It does, actually.
It does?
And I'm not looking at the sheet. Our office provided, and this is not the one I'm. But we provided information from the, from the long form in terms of the population and residence counts in the blocks all around all these sites. So that's where that's from. And then there were adjustments made for edge conditions. So the river, for instance, or the railroad tracks or the interstate. So first, we looked at the overall and then cut off ones that were cut off physically. Now that's, yeah.
So thank you for your questions, and if we have a few minutes before we switch topics, we'll get to those final questions, but maybe this is a time to hear some positives for this site. Besides the ones we've sort of already talked about, does anyone want to add anything?
The location.
Okay, location.
And the drunks won't get run over on Broadway when they're trying to get home.
Well, and not all homeless people are.
Drunks aren't allowed.
There's a lot of drunks.
I like this location because I like the proximity to the police department, frankly. I know the challenge is that there's then a connection made between some people who are maybe the most challenging and difficult people who are camping on curbs and corners. And I live downtown, I work downtown, so I'm really familiar with this whole situation. But I think that this location, when you talk about partnership health center, when you talk about the transfer station, when you talk about the police department, and you talk about emergency services, I mean, this is the location. The biggest downside to it is that there is fatigue on the part of the business community. That's really the biggest problem, is the fatigue on the part of the business community. And maybe location isn't the answer to that. Maybe there's a different answer. I don't know what that is, but.
On the strengths of this location or on the pub itself being here, I think that it's in, when I'm in healthcare, I'm always think safety first, and I think it's the safest location for the residents, for all involved. Moving it into a neighborhood with safety, raises a big concern with the kids living just adjacent to a facility. It brings up risk. And so I think the location that it's at, however populated, there's not families and kids, little kids running all over it. It also serves a really great location for the clients because Broadway is a huge concern, I think, for clients in Poverello.
Thank you.
I
was going to amend what she said. I was going to say exactly what she said.
Okay.
Same here. I was going to say exactly, she couldn't have said it better than I could, so thank you.
Okay, so let's quickly move on to any concerns we have for the Poverello. I just got my countdown.
For this location?
Yeah. Do we have any concerns about staying at the Ryman site?
One concern I have is, what do we do with the clients while we're building a new facility? And maybe you have the answer, but it seems to me if we're going to build the kind of facility that I think the Poverello is building with an inner courtyard, we're going to have to vacate that property, and maybe that's not accurate.
I think what I heard was that they're going to keep the residents in the current location while they build the L.
Okay.
And then switch things up to remodel
the current building or tear it down and rebuild?
Tear it down.
I would be, given the conversations that I've had, it would be disingenuous of me not to disclose that the commissioners are again talking about, they have basically three different lots on this site. There are two parking lots that are distinct parcels and the print shop. Once the discussion began, it was not so much about the print shop as their property that is already vacated. And could some, so the county is entertaining the notion of possibly swapping a lot for what the POV currently has. As it- you know, and I guess what I'm trying to say is that the configuration is still, you know, a subject of discussion here. It would not, it started out as the L and kind of emerged into the rest of the block, the half block.
So we're going to have to close just because the other group's going to come in. But I think that in regards to the questions, most of the questions got answered. There was a few in regards to the number count for residents on the 3 proposed locations. And any other questions that didn't get answered, just please write them down on the sheet. Hold on. And then
get it in. What's the consequences of putting 100 plus homeless people on Broadway?
well, let's save that for the Broadway.
That's a Broadway.
Because that would be a concern for the Broadway location, definitely.
Right, that's what I like to bring up.
Yeah, well, we're rotating through, so you'll get to address those concerns in just a few minutes.
Ma'am, this is the one site that we as county residents already own.
Okay, so that's definitely a success. The challenge was really the business owners' fatigue and the stress of downtown at this time. Okay, thank you.
This work group right here is going to be for the GMT site, which Amy will explain more about that in a minute. Basically, this group is going to go just like your last group did. We will go over a brief outline of the work group's perspectives on the site. Then we will have time for questions. Again, I'd like everyone to try and give everyone in the room a chance to ask their questions. So I'm going to limit you to one question until we've heard from the majority of the people. Any extra questions? There's 3 boards back there that you can write on, and all of those will be answered on the city website. After the questions, we'll go over the strengths that you see in this site, and then we will go into the concerns that you see in this site. Both are equally important because this is all going to go to the COB and help them decide which site to move into. The last part of our session is going to be just kind of a brief overview of what this group has vocalized. And then the 6 of us are going to move to a different room. You guys will stay here. All right? And I'll hand it over to Amy now.
Hello, my name is Amy Capilupo, and I am representing the heart of Missoula Neighborhood Association. And I have lived on Alder Street for 8 years, and recently, now my house is just a rental, but I hope to get back there. I shouldn't say just a rental, but it is, and I hope to get back. So in any case, this is the site that was, it's not this site right here. That's actually a misprint. The site is right here. And it's the former GMT site. Some of the positive or the strengths that we thought about this particular site were that it minimized impact to residents and businesses. But before, I want to talk about that before I go any further there. Because in terms of minimized impact to residents, there is a condo unit, 21 condo units to be considered right here. And it would have a huge impact on those neighbors. So how we arrived at that statement is because relative to the other 5 sites, this actually has 2 edge conditions, so it would be the river and then the adjacent property, which is vacant. So that's how we got to there, not because it wouldn't have any impact on the people next to it. And in terms of businesses, there's the city center right in front of it. Gosh, I always call it the wrong name, and I won't say what people call it. Thank you. Yes, it's got a bunch of names, some of them more colorful than others, but I think we just call it the City Motel, or something. No, Super 7? Super 7? City Lodge. City Lodge. Okay, Super 7 is right there as well. So that's how we came up with that being a positive. The next thing to consider that we thought was a positive was moving the Poverello from its current location. And the way in which that's a positive is right now the Poverello is viewed as housing dangerous people. It's used as housing folks who are more chronically homeless. That chronically homeless population will be downtown whether the Poverello is there or not. So this would separate the Poverello Center clients from the perceived, what's perceived. So we viewed that as a strength. The other thing that we viewed as a strength was access to emergency services, meaning, and Bob was the one who talked about this, police can get up and down Broadway. It's probably one of the fastest routes they can get up and down, as can fire trucks, ambulances. It's got good, it also has good bus transportation. So those are the things we viewed as strengths for this particular site. Challenges, we viewed as concerns of client circulation. So right now, that particular site is difficult to get in and out of crossing Broadway. So that would be for both vehicle transportation and foot traffic. The next thing that we viewed as a negative or challenge would be proximity to at-risk populations. So that would be across the street from the Y and the Missoula Youth Homes and maybe some of the other housing units that are over there, Bruce Blattner apartments, things like that. The next thing would be proximity to gathering places, including parks and schools. So that would be the proximity to Lowell School and the adjacent park. So that's what we viewed as challenges for that particular site. And with that, I'll turn it back over to you.
Did you guys have anything to add to that part? Okay, so now we'll open it up for questions. And again, I'm going to remind you that I will cut you off if you have more than one, just so we can get to everyone. Okay. Questions about the GMT site? Yeah.
I have heard, and I'd just like to make things clear, that the police department has interest in the current Poverello Center plan.
I can't tell you exactly what administration has looked at or what city administrators has looked at for a new police department. I can tell you that's not a driving force in the Poverello relocation at all. It's not even a consideration at this point.
I wanted to address something new. I appreciate the fact that you have done the proximity to at-risk population, the youth services, the Lowell School. I'm not going to get into an hour spiel on that. You know about Mr. Officer, but there's something new that you may not have considered.
Is this actually a question at this
Yes,
point?
it is a question.
Okay.
It is a question, not a comment. There is a bar and casino right next to the site you're looking at, just across the street, and the other one on Broadway. Now, if you're an alcoholic, and if I were an alcoholic and I looked at that, I would be so tempted to go into the bar and casino, I wouldn't know what to do. And if you're a recovering alcoholic, and that's right in your face, how in the heck are you going to avoid the temptation to go drink if you're trying to stay on the wagon? Now, that's a little bit of a concern, and I've thought about that a lot. That is right next to a bar and casino. That's too much of a temptation if you're trying to stay sober. Thank you.
Thanks, and
That's a new one.
we will put that in our concern section.
Thank you.
Did you want to comment on
I
that?
can address that a little bit. I think I asked one of the same questions of Dave Hadley, who is a resident of the Poverello, who is a recovering alcoholic himself, and I asked him the same thing, and his reply to me was, if I'm going to fall off the wagon, I'll fall off the wagon anywhere I choose. That proximity to those locations does not influence his decision to drink. That is his personal decision. And that's not me saying that, that's somebody that's recovering alcoholic.
Any questions? Yes.
Would one of the challenges be that it's on the back side of the river?
We can address that in the challenge sections for sure, but if any of the work group members want to address.
When we took that actually as a strength due to the fact that it's considered an edge condition, meaning that it does not border, and I see how it can certainly be a negative, so I won't debate that. But we viewed it as a positive because it did not face residential, the river, and it did not face a business. So that's how we viewed it.
Questions?
So the site must, this is a question, it must be adequately sized. When I think of that site, just when you're driving by it, it seems so tiny.
It does meet size requirement. Okay. It does.
Yeah.
For law enforcement, do you have concerns the congestion on Broadway during rush hour is considerable? How can you put 100+ homeless people every day, year-round, adjacent to Broadway and not add to congestion? Danger to both pedestrian and driver.
As far as vehicle congestion, the current POV doesn't add any congestion to downtown. None. Most of the clients don't have a vehicle.
Away from Broadway.
I can't hear you.
These sites are one curve away from Broadway.
Okay. And I understand the concern with traffic on Broadway. From my point of view, it can be really congested. I can still get down Broadway because there's a middle turn lane, and I can I can maneuver down Broadway just fine, okay? For access for other people to access that site, there is some concerns, and that was some of our concerns with that site, was the access point turning into it, or how are people going to get to that site without creating a major disaster? And we did put that in one of our concerns. I agree with you.
And again, we'll have the concern section, so keep that in your mind. Yeah, in the brown right here.
Is it one parcel or two parcels?
It is one parcel. It has at times been referred to as the old goofy gas site. That's not an adequate representation. It is just the former GMT building. It does not include the adjacent goofy site.
Sorry, my mind just went blank.
That's okay.
So my concern, I kind of consider this site and the trails to be one and the same. I'm a West Side neighborhood with children, kids who go to school. So to me, they're the same. The Poverello stated in our questioning and answering session online that it's the responsibility of the community to address the impact of the individuals who are denied services at the POV due to being intoxicated, any criminal record, or being a level 3 sexual offender. So this is more of a philosophical question, I guess, not for one of you specifically, but for all of us to ask ourselves. Is it ethical to place this responsibility on a school, families, children, and other vulnerable people who are saturated in this area? The Missoula Youth Homes, the YWCA, survivors of domestic violence and sexual assault. I mean, there's so many. The Bruce Blattner apartments, low-income housing, the Missoula Housing Authority that's filled right next door there with single moms and their children.
We'll put this definitely in the.
I'm
sorry, we only have a little bit of time. I understand.
I have 2 more words
Okay.
to get out of my mouth.
All right.
Is this ethical to place that responsibility on children, school, and families because the downtown Missoula is fatigued by the issue?
Thank you. And we will definitely, remember that. We'll put that in the concern section that, it is a hefty load on the neighborhood that is going to incur wherever the site is. This is we run out of time for our question section. If you have any extra questions, please write them on those papers back there, and the city and POP will work to answer them on their website. So now we get to the portion of the strengths section of this. What do you see as the strengths of this site? And Seth is going to be describing your ideas, and please let us know if we haven't interpreted them correctly.
Talk as fast as you can. Seth loves it.
Really easy for me.
Yes.
I think because it is a high traffic area, if the design of the facility includes retail, and the people that live there have a job right there in that retail and plugs into the community better. So I think the strength is that it is a high traffic area. If you provide a retail opportunity, you're providing jobs for people.
Okay. Anyone else? Strengths of the site, yes.
What I'm seeing based upon the proximity to client services, I'm seeing a lot of those client services are moving out of downtown and further to the west, so it might be a little bit more centralized, particularly when you look at, going to, the Palmer Suites, and to the Social Security office, I guess that's probably on the south side of town, the Veterans Clinic, the Office of Public Assistance, Turning Point, Western Montana Mental Health. So I'm seeing one of the advantages is that they're closer to some of the services. They are probably farther away from other services, but those other services are oftentimes last line services, St. Pat's, City Police.
Okay, great. Anyone else? Strengths of the GMT site? Yes.
I think, again, just the accessibility, the fact that it is on Broadway, and properly designed, it will be a very attractive facility that would really upgrade that area. The advantage of a new site is that you have a fresh slate to work from. And so you can build something that fits the needs, fits the community, and is attractive to look at. I think any of the few sites on Broadway would be fine.
So accessibility to Broadway? Yes.
What is the price difference of the properties between, if they were to
by GMT versus staying where they currently are? Just out of curiosity.
We actually don't know the price of staying where we currently are because we don't have all that information right now. When we did vet the site, we only proposed sites that we thought either through building a new facility or through having usable structures that we could remodel met our total project cost goal. So everything that we that the group, or that the Poverello Center forwarded to the group met those criteria. But within that, until we really get into some of the sites and do some hazardous testing, environmental assessments, things like that, it's really hard to come up with a number of exactly what the cost difference would be.
So it wouldn't be, I mean, it's not fair to say that them wanting to move from their current site because it's a price issue. We don't know that.
We don't know that, no.
Any other strengths for the GMT site? Yes.
I guess from the Poverello's perspective, they get the money to move the downtown businesses.
But if we stayed, we get the money to leave. If we stay, we also retain the property. And so there are pros and cons with each site. And also when you get into actual construction, how much it costs to build a new facility versus renovation, it's very complicated. And we had hoped to have some more concrete data before we were able to talk publicly about it, but it takes a long time to gather that. So we just didn't have time to work up numbers, or it's not necessarily feasible because it's such an intricate process too to work up numbers for every feasible site.
And actually, I just want to address that as a resident on this committee, because I actually went in with part of it living, a block away from the tool site, 4 blocks from the current Poverello, that there was a lot of financial incentive to move from Poverello. And while there is certainly some, it's not enough to move it to a lot of ideal locations, or more ideal locations. So all the properties that we had to sort of get rid of due to price, no one swooped in as much as they wanted to get rid of and said, we're going to throw you another $200,000 to put it out on that, maybe that Campbell Home site or another site that might be a better idea. So, I had kind of hoped for that to some extent because it would make my job easier here. So I don't know, you might have more information on that than I certainly do, but I did ask all those questions for what it's worth.
So that has concluded the strengths portion. Now we'll get to the concerns. And if I can just reiterate the concerns that I've already heard, the proximity to the casino, liquor store, bar, so possible relapse of our residents.
And we had accessibility, traffic
Yeah,
accessibility.
the tension on Broadway's traffic. I'm just giving Seth the time to, just a second.
There's a lot of,
Just a second, I'll get to it in 1 second. And then the responsibility that the neighborhood incurs.
Children in school specifically.
Children in school, yeah. The Lowell School in that Park neighborhood is a big. Okay.
I have a question.
1 second. Yes.
well, the Super 7 motel is right next to it, squashed right next to it. So there's possibility for a lot of tension there. A lot of problems arising from that.
Okay. So the tension with the Super 7 motel area, yes.
At the first meeting, it was brought out that one of the main challenges or concerns to pick a site that would not be close to schools and parks. I mean, it is. I mean, if we want to talk about the residents and the homes and the devaluations, all that kind of stuff, that it's close to a park and a school.
So again, that proximity to the school, the park area. Thank you. Yes.
My concern is, can you picture this? It's 5:30 at night, everybody wants to go eat at the bar, and there's a lot of drunks and a lot of people that are using and drinking that go eat there. I've done it for years. I'm clean and sober for almost 22 years now. What is going to happen when all those people start coming across Broadway? Half of them are disabled, I'm mentally ill, I can't walk very fast, and they're all going to be crossing there, trying to get over across Broadway to get food and stuff. A lot of the people are so screwed up, they don't even know which way they're going. They're for real, and I know the people, the street people.
Sure.
And what's going to happen with the traffic, everybody getting off work and everybody trying to get to the pub or leave the pub all at once.
Okay.
That's gonna be, unless they build an underpass or an overpass.
Right.
That's gonna be.
So a concern would be foot traffic of both the residents and the public at large.
It's gonna be dangerous for everybody.
And I think also safety for the children of people who are using the pub services. You know, there's a river right
You
there.
got kids, river.
Yeah, I think it's not a very safe location.
Safety
not
of the residents and their
helpful
families.
location to the residents of the Poverello Center or to the clients of the Poverello Center.
Yes.
I would agree with the gentleman down there about the Super 7 motel, and I thought that as a challenge, but then I thought about it also could be a positive, because I know in the past, they used the hotel out on Brook Street as with families in. I don't know if some sort of arrangement cannot be made with that motel during the wintertime to put families in that, and maybe make that negative into a positive at the same time.
So ongoing concerns if they put it at this site. I guess this is more of a strength with the proximity to the hotel and possibly using it for family housing. Yes.
YWCA placing women next to beer users.
Proximity to the YWCA as well as the youth homes, yes.
Of course, sexual offender, like child molesters near Lowell School, and we've kind of covered part of that, but I've had nightmare visions about children, sex offenders near the children trying to molest them. There was an incident of that, by the way, about last year, or this year. It was all over kind of the neighborhood, some posters saying this is a big sex offender, and they are in the motels, and he was trying to molest the children near Lowell School. It happened. And I'm just worried more about, the safety of the children near sex offenders and molesters.
Thank you. So proximity again to Lowell. Yes.
With all this concern about it affecting businesses downtown, well, it's now moving to a business area along with a residential. So why does that, are the businesses out there not considered as good as a business downtown?
Proximity, or I guess effect on businesses as well as the neighborhood in the west side. Questions, sorry, challenges. Yes.
Moving further from the police station.
Moving further from the police station.
Let me address that really quick. And don't assume that when we talked about emergency services locations, that kind of stuff, don't assume the distance from the police station makes a difference. It's the distance from wherever my car is at that point, and how quickly I can get to that location from our standpoint. And the same as fire or ambulance.
Sure. Then I would maybe asterisk that with further from the police station, but closer to school.
Yes.
Again, the proximity towards Lowell. Yes.
With the police station, it also takes it further away from the health department, this bus transfer center. And somebody said it places it more central in the community, so that's a plus, but they're gonna go back to the bus transfer center to get out to North Reserve for the services. So it doesn't really make sense, because they're gonna be headed back to the transfer center.
So distance from, great. Yes.
I'd like to find out more about what the woman said about the police being interested in that site for themselves, the existing Poverello site. I could address that. At one point in time, we were looking at developing a new police station 5 or 7 years ago, and one of the sites that was discussed was the Poverello site if it were to ever relocate. It was one of the challenges that we were presented with, and one of the reasons we pursued a downtown master plan. The master plan calls for a new police station to be located between the county courthouse and City Hall. So that block, that site is not being considered for a new police station.
Thanks. Yes.
One concern is that it doesn't, I think, address the bigger issue of the homeless situation across Missoula. Is that it's like trying to decide how big a Band-Aid or whether to build a new Band-Aid over an open wound. And so it's really, I think, the challenge is that it's not integrated to solve the issue.
And really, you could say that challenge is on any of the site options right now, correct? Yeah.
I agree with you.
Thank you. Okay, final concerns, yes.
Three small ones, I guess. One of them would be, it would negatively impact the property values on the condominium project immediately to the west. I suspect it would probably be used for about half of what we're looking at. Just a ballpark figure. There's also a bike path walkway that goes right by that site right now. And I see that I spent a lot of time in that area at one time. There's a lot of, young ladies, families that ride their bikes right through there. I mean, it's right next to that site. It's right next to it. They go down that alley, they come out on the street. And then another one, you're going to have overflow from, the Poverello Center is full. You're going to have overflow, and a lot of those people are going to go out on that island, which is right behind you. And it's already problematic now because they're always out there now. It's the police department knows they're down there picking them out of there all the time. They're out there building fires and they go out there and live, and there'll be a lot more of them out there.
So if I heard you correctly, it was proximity to that bike path and the possible public interaction with the residents there, the access to the kind of wildlife, I don't want to say wildlife, but yeah, the outdoor section of that neighborhood.
Part of the thing about it is because the police department is on that island, sometimes they're details.
Right, okay, thanks. So that concludes our concern section of this portion. Sorry, no, we're running out of time. Well, we're actually running out of time. I'd like to actually go through and reiterate, because I have heard, this is obviously a heated issue. Strengths, would you mind? So the strengths that this group has proposed for this site is that it's possible that it would be more accessible for the residents, that it is also a high traffic area, so again, that leads towards accessibility. And then the major concerns are the proximity to Lowell, the strain on the west side neighborhood, and the concerns about public safety in that area, as well as the safety of the residents. Is that about? All right. And again, please, if you have any more questions, those things are back there. And thank you all for your voices and your participation.
You of the 4 tasks that we're going to do. We're going to get a brief presentation from Ginny Miriam about the site, give you a chance to ask questions. We're going to talk about strengths of the site and challenges of the site, and that's when we really want to hear from you what your thoughts are about those things. And then we'll do a little summing up at the end for the highlights. You know the routine by now. Okay. And I'm going to introduce the 4 work group members who are presenting this site are Ginny Miriam, Patty, Ann, and Dan. Okay, Ginny.
All right, hi. So as you know from this being the 3rd site that you're looking at, that there are many more strengths and many more challenges to each site than we have listed. But we try to boil down the ones that seem to be the most important and rose to the top. The first strength of this particular site, 1106 West Broadway, is a little bit difficult to explain, so I'll spend a little more time on it. We know from the homeless needs assessment that the city did last fall that there are different kinds of homeless people in different populations. Approximately 11% of the homeless people in Missoula are labeled chronically homeless, and many of them are people, probably most, who do not access the services of Poverello Center for one reason or another, often having to do with alcoholism or drug use, or reasons that the Poverello Center staff is not equipped to be able to take care of. Those are people who are often downtown and are seen as having disruptive behaviors, even illegal behaviors that are untenable for the general population. Those people are often confused with the actual clients of the Poverello Center, who are mostly not those people. Most of the clients we don't actually see out in public. And so a strength of this site is that it is a bit removed from that downtown setting and could perhaps help to clarify those 2 different populations in the minds of the public. You can ask more about that if that's not clear. Another strength of this site is its proximity and the ease of emergency vehicles and services to get to it. So West Broadway is very easy to travel. Quick response from police cars, quick response from the fire engines who bring medical crews and emergency response, and also from ambulances. So very easy to get to. The challenges of this site that rose to the top are its proximity to at-risk populations. For instance, it's very close to the YWCA, which provides services to victims of domestic violence. It is relatively close to Missoula youth homes, to apartment complexes for people with disabilities who might also be considered to be at risk. A second challenge of this site is its closeness to public gathering places, which we were told by the public that that can be seen as a negative. So closeness to parks, for instance, the courthouse lawn would be seen as a place that would fall into that category.
We're not talking about Rhineland Street. Sorry.
Sorry?
We're talking about Rhineland Street right now.
No, we're talking about,
Why are you being... She was using it as an example.
So we're gonna have lots of time to hear from you guys when we have questions and strengths and challenges, so let's let her finish, okay? Thanks.
And this particular site does have some proximity to those public gathering places, which we see as a challenge of the site.
Okay, now it's time for questions. Yes, ma'am?
I sense a kind of stereotype about who actually uses the Poverello in addition to the confusion with the chronically homeless population. But the stereotype seems to be dangerous men. And I had the impression that there were also women and children and people that we would very much consider at risk, mentally ill and others. And so I'm just wondering what the portion of women and children staying at the pub is compared to men.
And do you want to address that?
There are no children.
No. Right. So it's men, but there are women in addition to men.
There are no families, no children. There are families and children who eat there but do not spend the night.
Okay, so that's where the children at risk come in who are actually clients of the Poverello. And also, what proportion of the people sleeping at any one time are women?
I think it varies dramatically, but I'm gonna hazard a guess, 10 to 15%.
Okay, thanks.
Okay. Yeah.
If the residents of the pub are not the people who are contributing to the dangerous conditions and the disturbances downtown, why then do they need to be one-year emergency services like the police or easily accessible to the police and fire? And two, why is it then dangerous or inappropriate for them to be around businesses, parks?
Who wants to take that? Work group?
Well, the vast majority of the emergency responses are medical at the pub. If you look at what the police department put together, that's the main reason it needs to be. And there are some disturbances, but again, those are all enumerated on that handout. So we're not saying it doesn't happen as much as we're saying these really are two distinct populations.
I think the idea is the safety of the POV residents on the site, their access to emergency services.
Correct, yeah.
Yes.
Will this center have a Salcedo? Will it be a Salcedo as well?
That decision hasn't been made.
That would only add to the danger. A friend of mine does eat at the pub. Yeah, I've had friends who've been at the pub. I've known a lot of pub residents, and I've been accosted by homeless people. Now, we're not saying that all people at the pub are dangerous, but even my friend says that a lot of these people are unstable. Can you guarantee simply that the children and the families are going to be 100% safe in the Sherwood neighborhood at Lowell School? Can you guarantee this? Because I've been accosted by these people as well.
It's easy, no.
There we are. Thank you.
No guarantees.
Okay.
If you do not guarantee it, I rest my case and my question. That estimates itself.
All right, thank you. Yeah.
Can you guarantee that we won't get assaulted walking out here?
Well, the man is being, it's just a logical question. He doesn't mean 100%, but he's just.
Well, that's what I'm saying
Yeah.
too.
Yeah.
You know, can't guarantee 100% of anything.
Okay.
I was gonna ask, because that is a concern, why, or if there's any research out there, or if research has been looked at, because I would think this would be the first time a homeless shelter of locations, and there's probably sociology research done on it, and whether that has been looked at, about whether it moves kind of like the homeless hub, if that whole population moved, or just those using Poverello services who were kind of emphasizing are less worrisome and less disruptive to the community. And whether if the research is out there and if it has been looked at in this.
I don't entirely understand your question, but I can tell you that the staff has done a lot of research, and the director's done a lot of research about how our group compares to other groups elsewhere. As far as the move goes, I can't really answer your question. I don't know.
Yes. Who represents the downtown? Okay, so if the businesses and things downtown consider some of the problems that are associated with homeless people, and I definitely am not saying that all homeless people are bad. I want to help the Poverello have a good place and a good facility. Having those burdens that the downtown businesses deal with in the daylight hours while they're open, putting that in somebody's neighborhood, why would you put that burden on families, and more so children, that should deserve to live in a place where they can go outside in their backyard with a fence around it and feel safe? Or down the street, or wherever, in our neighborhood.
I can answer that with 2 points. The first point would be, we don't think anybody anywhere should have to have that problem. And so we are not only dealing with the POV, and we see the POV as just one part of this issue. So we're dealing with things like the dedicated downtown police officer, the hot team. I've got a handout here I can give you of about 20 things that we're working on so that we address the whole problem. This is one part. Specifically as to this part, we looked at it, and part of the information that we were given as a team was the number of people who live within 1,500-foot radius of the various locations. And the POV location, the existing POV location, if you subtract out the number of 100 people who are considered to live at the POV, has over 1,800 residents in that area. That's within about a 5-minute walking distance. This location and the other location on West Broadway has about 1,300 people who live within 500 or the 1,500-foot circle. And so if you just want to look at impact on residents, you've got about 500 more residents that are impacted at the existing POV location that are impacted if it moves to West Broadway. And so, I mean, I assume you live in the neighborhood, and you know but there are 500 more. There are 500 more people. There are 500 more people who live within the neighborhood where the existing POV is than live within your
But
neighborhood.
can I add to that? The
So-
people that live
Not children.
I'm sorry, I'm going to be the bad facilitator now.
I want to finish my answer.
Okay, I'll let you finish your answer, but then we need to roll on to the next thing, just so we
So
get
my
to all.
answer is, if we're looking from a downtown perspective, we did not look at trying to put something in your neighborhood, but objectively looking at it, we're going to impact more residential people if we stay in the current location by 500 than if we move to the new location.
Okay, I'm sorry. What I want to ask you to do is to continue, this is not your last chance to express your concerns or ask your questions.
The people that live by it right now chose to move by it. When I bought my house,
All right.
I didn't choose to.
So we're going to
buy
move
it.
into the discussion of strengths and challenges, and you can add that there, okay? All right, so we're going to list the strengths as you guys see them of this location as Poverello Center. Yes, sir.
Same one I listed for the GMT site, which you guys were here, it's basically accessibility. I mean, it's on Broadway, which is a major thoroughfare. Good bus service, good vehicular transportation. Granted, there will be some congestion at times, but I think it's the site, because of its condition being right on Broadway, has good accessibility. And I want to also just mention, I'm delighted that Ginny differentiated the populations for us, because a lot of people have a lot of misconceptions. If you really clarify that, it's really helpful around really using the Poverello as opposed to the perception of what people think about using the Poverello. I think that's an important distinction.
Okay, thank you. Strengths of this site.
As I said earlier, I like this site because it's more centralized to some of the services being utilized by the clientele, recognizing that it is further away from some of those sites that are located downtown. I also like this site better than the GMT site because it's away from the river, and some of the challenges that we were discussing at the last time was being on the water and the safety of people in that public recreation space.
Okay, so not exactly on the water. Okay, great. Any other strengths of this site?
It also removes it from that hotel that closest to that Super 7, which I think is a strength of the other sites.
In relation to the GMT site?
Right.
It's farther away from the hotel than the GMT site.
Can I add another?
We're gonna try to follow our rule where we let everybody who wants to speak once before you speak twice. You could self-monitor that. That would be helpful to me. Did you have something?
Strength would be partly because the high traffic, like I said before, is that I think it's an ideal location for social enterprise integrated into the site. You have retail, create jobs for people that stay there. This is a high traffic area that will support retail.
Okay. So the proximity to retail as a strength for social enterprise and jobs. Okay, one more strength and then we'll move to challenges.
It's a self-contained site with streets all around, so it could be designed so that it's kind of enclosed and provides space all around for the people, the clients of the Poverello.
Okay. Contained. Okay, we're going to move to challenges. What do you see as challenges with this site? Yes, sir.
All right, I live in a barber shop right across the street from Trails End, Trails West. Right by that, 1/2 block from Trails End, Trails West, is a apartment complex full of families and children. 1/2 block away. So that this is a neighborhood. This is a neighborhood. There's lots of kids around in the school, just 3-4 blocks off the street.
Okay, so proximity to kids, apartment complex in particular. Other challenges with this site?
I see this site as not safe for the residents of the Poverello Center. We know Broadway, I've lived in this area for 13 years. I know people have been killed on Broadway, and I really think that will happen to residents. And I also feel like it's not safe for the neighborhood, and very particular the single housing complex in Manhattan, and all it's high density housing, and housing that we're talking about are families and little kids, and when you don't feel safe, that's 90%.
So the new information there is the first part, which was the not safe for the residents living on Broadway, and then the new information about safety for neighbors was what she said about feeling safe, that they would feel safe there. Right. Okay. Yeah.
I guess it's a question slash concern. According to the West Broadway corridor plan, a quarter mile of the distance is the accepted distance that an individual is willing to walk to a desirable location. The trail's end is less than a quarter of a mile from Lowell School and Park, Westside Public Park. So I'm curious what, and I'm not aware of any, what outreach that Poverello has done to engage in conversation with our principal, with Dr. Apostle, with the school system. There's going to be issues, there's going to be concerns. It would be naive to think that this location is not going to bleed into our school and our park. And there needs to be conversation. I don't know of any that's going on. I'm curious what the plan is to deal with the school and the public park, with the city parks department.
So what I'd like to do is if we have a minute at the end, then give them the opportunity to answer the question. If not, I want to encourage you to put the question
Yeah,
on there.
it's sort of concern slash question.
And get clear that the challenge is the proximity to the school and also the need to speak to the school district, the principal of Lowell School and the school district. Is that correct? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And so we're going to just hold on to your question. Who hasn't spoken yet? You. Yeah.
I just want to mention, realizing the restraints of doing all the work that you guys have done, that the 4-block perimeter doesn't really seem to be a very good indication, especially here in the quarter mile. I don't know off the top of my head how many blocks is a mile. 4? No.
It's 16 blocks per mile, so 4 blocks is approved.
Okay, so it's a quarter mile, so we're kind of pushing that limit. I would say my weakness would be that 4-block perimeter doesn't seem to be a very good indication of the expansion of the water.
Okay. So the 4-block perimeter is maybe inadequate to when you're thinking about how far people are going to walk. Okay. Anyone who hasn't spoken yet? I think you. Okay, go ahead.
I'm concerned that the moving Montana's largest homeless shelter down on Broadway doesn't fit into the West Broadway Corridor Community Vision Plan that was put forward by the city and adopted by the city.
Okay. So the West Broadway Corridor Plan, consistency with the plan. Others who I haven't heard from yet, or we haven't heard from yet. Anybody?
I think from a cost perspective, and I don't know how my dollar we're spending, this site is going to be much more expensive than the existing site because they already own the existing site. And this is pretty much ideal commercial / real estate, or not real estate. Anyway, commercial property, a lot of desirable uses from the retail perspective. And I think, as I mentioned earlier, the cost is just going to be substantially higher. I'm concerned about it's surrounded by streets, high traffic areas. It's going to be so easy to walk from that site out onto a busy street. That's got to be a concern. And just to rebut a little bit a suggestion made earlier, if a retail area is desirable for the Poverello Center, why don't we just move it closer to downtown? And I thought that's what we were trying to do from this move, is the downtown impact on the businesses downtown.
Okay. Did you get those two? Okay. Yes.
One gentleman back here said that the traffic on Broadway, that people are going to be able to find jobs because they'll be closer to the traffic. Or actually, a situation like this will drive jobs out of the area.
Okay.
There won't be more opportunities in the U.S.
Okay.
And I would like just to point out, since you have a picture of the trails end, just may I approach the podium?
Well, we just have a very short period of time.
Hey, I came here,
I know, I understand.
I just want to point something out.
Okay, what is it?
This site is an island that is separated by a curve It goes all the way around it. And we're gonna put 100 homeless people on this island every day, year round. And that is not going to affect traffic on Broadway. It just doesn't seem logical to me.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, one more. Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, God. I didn't hear from you at all. Go ahead.
I have concerns, and I said this earlier, that we're taking them further away from downtown services such as the transfer center, the health department. I know the police station is really not a factor in it because police can get anywhere, but I would imagine the majority of them use the health department for their regular services.
Okay. Thank you. Yes.
The concern would be is that the current plan doesn't address the role of solving the bigger challenge in Missoula's homeless situation. It's a laceration or it's a bigger cut or an open wound. And this is a Band-Aid in effect that will cover about 1/10 of that population. It misses all these young women with children that are homeless that is just driving me crazy. It misses all the families that are now, it's the big growing population. There's over probably close to 1,000 people that are homeless in Missoula. So serving these 100 is really important to me, but integration into a bigger plan is critical. This doesn't concern.
Okay, thank you. You got that? Okay, yes.
I know that there's a bus stop at the casino for Porter Middle School. That's a concern.
Okay. Porter Middle School bus stop on the site. Okay, so we're gonna.
Kids bus stop too. A school bus.
A school bus stop for Porter, yeah, for Porter Middle School. Yeah. So we're gonna, sorry, I'm gonna ask you to hold on to that. We're going to just talk about common themes that can be presented back to the group. If you want to just say what a few of those are. Anybody?
What was, I missed?
We're just going to highlight some common themes that came out in this conversation that will be presented back to the big group. Just what you
So you
want to
do that or we do that?
No, Ginny's going to do that.
Oh.
Yeah.
She's going to report them back, so you would like us to speak up.
Yeah, you guys didn't do this before in your other groups?
No.
Oh.
Children,
Yeah.
families.
Children?
I would say that it's a neighborhood full of families and children. Neighborhood of families and children.
Yep. Okay.
Heavily impacted.
And safety, the safety of the clients and everyone at large, that I think the goal is to find a location where it's safe for everyone. And I see this is not being done.
Safety of clients and everyone. I think we're supposed to be done right now. Right? We have one more minute.
Well, maybe they could answer the question that was brought up earlier.
Okay. The question brought up earlier that was unanswered.
Principal.
Oh, yeah, contact with our school and the school system and the parks department, because this is going to greatly affect that area. And what contact has been made and what are the plans to engage with the school, and it's a school that's already, unstable.
Basically, I don't know that there's any particular outreach to the school, but the school is made aware of the entire process.
By us.
Well, by
After I asked.
yeah. And so if there was a school official, they're welcome to come and just like you are.
So I want to clarify, but can we clarify, this is not the end. This is not the end of the conversation. There's more outreach that the Poverello is going to do. There's more conversation that's going to happen as this process moves forward. So this isn't the last chance for anyone to be part of it.
Point of clarification.
Yeah?
I'm addressing both the neighborhood. I'm a landscape architect. I design pedestrian ways, bikeways, and so forth. there's an 8% grade going up Hawthorne into that area. And even though people can traverse that, it's not as accessible to people that are going across Shelby that it would be if it's on the flat. And I just wanted to point that out. I understand your concern. I was involved in a project there at Sherwood and Burton 2 years ago, and we weren't even aware of the fact that Broadway was anywhere nearby because it's so secluded out there in that hill. And I understand your concern, and I'm not trying to force anything on you, but you be aware of the fact that topographic relationships affect how people travel.
We see people walk that area all the time, so that
Also, there isn't a radius involved, it's just that.
Okay, I'm going to just wrap up the formal part of this. Of course, you can keep talking until the group comes back, but I just want to thank everybody for your thoughts and respectfully listening to each other. Thank you. Thank you all for your thoughtful deliberation in through those 3 sessions. I rotated through and got to hear a good part of each of the sessions. And how about those facilitators? Let's give them a round of applause. And I think for as difficult a time as you probably had identifying the strengths and challenges of each site, you have a sense of the work that the work group went through. It is not an easy task to apply complex criteria to these sites. And I'd like to give them another round of applause to acknowledge their work. They did excellent work. In a moment, I'm going to invite up a representative from each of those 3 teams to come and share back to the whole group what were the common themes they heard. You all got to hear your group's thoughts about the, each site, but there were 2 other sessions who also had thoughts. So we want to give everybody a chance to hear some of those common themes. I want to share a couple things that I heard as I was listening, and one of the most significant things I heard is how many people said we need to be having a bigger conversation, not just about what comes next for the Poverello Center, but what are we going to do about homelessness. And I am so thankful that this community wants to have that conversation. And it's important for the mayor to know that we want to have that conversation. The mayor has a committee. A number of those people are in this room that are working on a 10-year plan to address homelessness. That creating a comprehensive plan is absolutely one of the mayor's priorities, and I think he would be thrilled to have this level of engagement in that conversation. So I'm so pleased to hear that. I was also so pleased to hear how much concern people have for Poverello Center clients, that you want to make sure that clients have adequate facilities where they're treated with dignity, where they have safe access to the services that they need, and I heard that in almost every session that I was popped into. And I also heard, that people have a lot of concerns still. And one of the things, for those of you who were at the first work group meeting, you might have saw that we added a 4th working assumption to this session. We started with the assumptions that poverty is a critical concern in Missoula, that the Poverello Center is playing a key role in meeting that concern, and that community members' diverse perspectives need to be considered in figuring out how the POVS performs its mission. What we added is that more community education is needed around homelessness, around who the POV serves and what services they provide. And it was also clear to me that there is a lot of missing information and misinformation that is very much still embedded in this conversation. And there's no way to educate, to provide all the education that's needed in this short amount of time. One of the things at last month's meeting that the POV offered was tours, and I would really recommend that anybody who has not toured the facility to go on a tour, to have a better understanding of who are we talking about when we're talking about the Poverello Center, who are we talking about when we're talking about the Salcedo Center clients, to go into those facilities and have a sense of that. I want to make a particular acknowledgement for the people in the room who are Poverello clients. There are a number of people who've been part of both community meetings who currently live at the Poverello Center or who have recently lived there. And it is not easy to sit in a room and listen to misinformation about your group. And those of you, there's a couple police officers here, know what it's like to come into a group and people have tons of assumptions about them because they're cops. And many of you have probably had the experience of walking into a room and people have tons of assumptions about you because of some label that they've decided, floats over your head. And in this issue and the fear around this issue, there's a lot of things that have been thrown around. People are fearing for their children's safety, fearing their children will be sexually abused, fearing that awful things will happen. And you're talking about those things with people in the room who are homeless and living at the POV. You might not know that, but they were in every group. And it's hard to hear. And I just want to thank the POV clients who came here and decided to be part of this process, because I know it is hard to hear some of the misinformation about your group. So thank you for being here. To invite the work group members from the 3 groups to come get stationed up here, who are going to be doing your report backs. So come station. All right, and maybe we'll just go one at a time. Remind people what location that you're reporting back on, and summarize the strengths or challenges for each site. And we're being instructed to stand here because this is where a microphone is. So. Please start. Sure.
Okay, I was in the group presenting on 535 Ryman Street, the current Poverello. And thank you all. There were wonderful discussions in all 3 of our sessions. Some of the themes that came out in each session as pluses for 535 Ryman were proximity to client services, being close to partnership, health, St. Pat's, the transfer center, those sorts of things. Another one that came out frequently are that the impacts of the Poverello clients on the downtown are very well understood. They've been there for 30 years, and the impacts are known and will be addressed in any new facility that is put on that site. People brought up the fact that 535 Ryman is in the heart of the community of Missoula, and it is an opportunity for all of Missoula to help share in the burden of caring for the homeless in our community. Another really interesting point that was brought up is how working with Missoula County is an opportunity for the county government to help share in caring for Missoula's homeless people, and that it's a great opportunity. The city's been very involved in this, the county has not been, and so this is an opportunity for the county to step up some and help us all take care of this burden of homelessness. And an interesting thing that Mike pointed out in our last session is that in each group we had at least one downtown business owner who said that they support having the Poverello remain downtown. Some of the minuses that we heard, a lot of fatigue from downtown businesses and also residents. People pointed out that there are a lot of residents downtown. It's not just all businesses. One concern with that is downtown businesses will be critical to raising the money that the Poverello will need in order to build a facility anywhere. And so, we might lose that financial support were the POV to stay at 535 Ryman. Another really good point is that of the 3 sites, 535 Ryman is the only one that is not in an urban renewal district, so money won't be available from the redevelopment agency to help. And my understanding is that's tear down costs that they can help with at the Broadway sites. And then again, the third negative that we heard was, just because of that fatigue from businesses and people downtown, that could present a real obstacle to, any fundraising and new development at that site. And hopefully I did a good job, but we heard a lot of information. I think everybody did. And thank you guys all for coming tonight.
Okay, so my group was responsible for reviewing the, oh gosh, what are those numbers in order? 1151 West Broadway site, the former GMT site. And speaking plainly, there was far more negative feedback about this site than positive feedback. And it was so much so that forming an easy balance between the two would be difficult. So that's the first thing I'd like to say. The second thing, as far as new information regarding some of the strengths, would again be, well, it's sort of new, we didn't highlight it enough, is that really this would be people talked about this being a good site as far as proximity to client services. So regarding that, that would be the Palmer Street Services, maybe Western Montana Mental Health, that could be a potential strength. And again, the accessibility of the bus there. So those were two strengths that people talked about. The overwhelming challenges of that site, where everyone brought up safety concerns related to the proximity to Lowell School. And another big concern from all three groups was the impact it would have on the residents who own the condos next to it. So those 21 condo units would have an impact. People talked about that overwhelmingly too. The other challenge that people mentioned overwhelmingly was the island, I guess that's associated. That's right behind that site. There's an island, and people have camped on that island before, and there's an element associated with that island that would be unfavorable to any residential neighborhood. So that's the feedback that was given on this particular site. So thank you.
I have a very large notepad. So I'm talking to you about this site at 1106 West Broadway, which is where the Trails End Tavern and the Osprey Nest has been. The strengths that we heard were pretty similar in each group, and the challenges also. One of the things that people like about this site is the size of the parcel of land. The idea being that there is enough land there to do some smart design that includes some interior courtyards that can contain the clients and the client services inside that block. Another thing that people like about this site is that it's close to services for the Poverello clients. So easy walking or busing to Partnership Health Center, to the health department, other services that people use when they are staying at the Poverello Center. And the third thing that we heard in each group is that people thought this location would decrease the traffic of Poverello clients in downtown Missoula, which is seen as a plus. The challenges of this, we overwhelmingly heard from each group that people are worried about the proximity of Poverello clients in this location to children and families in the neighborhood, and also to Lowell School, and that is either real or perceived unsafe situation. Apparently many families and young families living in that neighborhood, and we heard that in every group that we heard. There were some folks too who thought that there was a challenge for transportation, that this is too far removed from the bus transfer station downtown, which is critical to making the transfers and getting all over town if you depend on the bus to move around. Again, really lots of comments about being too close to Lowell School. So that's how that came out, that site.
And again, I want to just thank you all for your thoughtful contributions in this process. My next step, actually somebody in my office's next step, is to type up all of this. If you don't know about VISTA, Volunteers in Service to America, it's a great use of VISTA, volunteers. To type all this up and give a consolidated report back to the Poverello Center board and staff so that they can continue their deliberation process. And I want to welcome Erin to come up and explain to you what's going to come next from the POV's standpoint. So let's welcome Erin up.
Hello. First, we'd like to, of course, thank everybody for being here tonight. It's a very long night, and I'm sure it was as difficult for most of you as it was for us at times, and we really thank you for being here. This process, which began over a month ago, has really provided us both necessary and valuable information on what the future of the Poverello Center holds and what that future looks like and where that future is going to be located. So we truly do value every suggestion, opinion, and concern that has been shared with us, and we consider everybody in this room, including lots of folks that aren't in this room, as really valuable stakeholders. We would like to, I know lots of thanks have gone out, but we'd like to specifically thank both the mayor and United Way for facilitating this process. It couldn't have happened without them. And a huge thanks to NCBI, which I don't think they've really been thanked yet. So big It truly does take an enormous amount of skill and experience to navigate these conversations well and to do it with grace, and so we're really grateful to them. We're also incredibly grateful to all of our working group members for the time that they have devoted, and their families have devoted to this process. It has not only been a large time commitment, but a large investment of energy and emotion, and so I'd like to thank them as well. And most importantly, again, we thank all of the neighbors, businesses, our human service partners that are here tonight, invested community members, really everyone that's participated in conversations, whether that's been through these meetings, through the online comment section, through phone calls and emails to us, that again, we really hear your voice and it really matters to us, so thank you for that. As we move forward, we have a very hefty job on our hands. Our next step is really just to gather all of the information that has been provided in all of these forums, including suggestions that were provided to us in the first public process meeting, comments that have been submitted online, things that have been directly brought to us at the Poverello Center, the recommendations of the working group, and all of the feedback that gets provided at tonight's meeting. This information will play a key role in how we move forward in identifying a location that not only meets the needs of our clients, but really acknowledges and addresses the needs of the entire community. Another factor that's going to be used to determine the best possible location is financial criteria, the total project cost, and how all these sites work into that. We did talk a little bit in individual groups about things that we will not know until we get into sites, whether through environmental assessment or testing or design, and so we want to be clear too, we don't have all the information yet, so we'll continue to gather that information, and as that comes in, that will inform our decisions as well. At this moment, we're considering all 3 sites recommended by the working group as viable options. And we, right now, don't have a firm set timeline for making a determination. That timeline is going to be largely impacted by how long it takes us to gather that information that, again, we don't yet have on individual sites. Once we do choose a future location for the Poverello Center, we'll begin heavily outreaching to neighboring businesses, community members, any residential impact that a new location will have. And folks will have lots of opportunity to participate in what that next phase looks like, whether that be through focus groups or design charrettes or a range of possibilities. So the process, while this public process as facilitated by NCBI wraps up tonight, the process of relocating the Poverello Center continues, and we hope that that conversation will continue as well. There are many ways, as all of the wonderful facilitators have said tonight, that you can continue to voice your opinion to us. One of those is through the online comment section on the city website, which will remain active. Another of those is just to contact us directly, whether that's through calling our shelter or emailing us at the Poverello Center, and all that information is available on our website. Again, we don't consider this the end of the conversation, so we hope that we can continue to talk and that you can continue to provide us valuable feedback and share your voice as we move forward in making this decision. So again, just thanks to everybody tonight for coming, and thanks to all of our partners as we move forward, and we hope that we can continue to hear from you. So, thanks.
Thank you.
So there's a couple next, things that are going to happen. The mayor is going to say a couple things to you. He welcomed you to the first meeting, and he's going to help close this meeting. And then Kristina is going to do the final closing of this meeting. I just want to do a little plug about NCBI. to shift gears slightly. So some of you have been like, wow, I didn't know anything about this organization, and this is what you do, and this is what we do. We facilitate workshops, events, community meetings to help create more understanding around divisive issues, to help reduce prejudice, to prevent conflict or violence. And if you have thought, like, I want to be like them, those gray-shirted people, we are having a training of trainers in October, and there's some handouts in the back about that. We would love to have you there. It's a great skill set that you can apply in your family to resolve conflict, on your block, in your workplace, and you could also help be part of leading community change efforts like this. So if you're interested, find out more. With that, I'm just going to invite the mayor to offer his 2 cents. Yes.
So I'm going to suggest that that wasn't a misplaced shameless plug on the part of Tommy. So here's the deal. I've been trying to think about what to say here as we wrap this up. Here's the thing about process. It's painful, right? And I can tell you that I wasn't here earlier because I wanted you all to do this, right? I didn't sit on any working group because I wanted you all to do this and sort of experience the challenges that come with making complex community decisions about which we don't all agree. That's what this process and lots of our processes are about. So you felt the pain, and I hope you felt some measure of pleasure. I hope that you will leave tonight with some inkling that you know a little bit more about your neighbor and her or his concerns, no matter what side of this question, and there are many you're on. I also hope that you'll continue to think about what's next and how do we work to address this community problem. So folks in my office, Ginny Merriam, Marty Rabine, others in particular, spend most of their days fighting an irresistible compulsion to fix stuff. Right? Believe it or not, that's why we're in this racket. That's why I stuck my big nose into this deal. That's why some of you did. We want to fix stuff, right? That's what this is about. And the uplifting piece of all of this business for me, and I hope for you, is that generally speaking, you are all here to try to figure out a way to fix this. And if we can fix this, which I think we can, there's little we can't fix. Right? Working together, we can fix a lot of stuff. There is a bucket of tension in this room, but I think if we all take a deep breath, think about where you are today compared to where you started when you started thinking about this, you'll see that you've moved the ball forward, maybe just slightly, but forward. That's progress. The next step for the POV, who, remember, is not obliged in any way to engage in any of this, right? They're doing it because they want to fix stuff, right? Whether it's the staff, whether it's the board of directors, or whether it's the folks in this room tonight who live there, who take advantage of the services, who find that the only help available for them today happens on Ryman Street, and their hope is that when the next someone needs help, that there's a place that makes sense. There's a place that's comfortable and decent and safe. A place that they can call home for however long they need to call home before they find a permanent home, right? That's what this is about tonight. So we drill in on details. We drill in on pros and cons. We drill in on what will work, what won't work, whose ox is gored, who's threatened, scared, gratified, angry, happy. In the end, we're back to working together. In the end, we're back to trying to figure out what's next. For the POV, or for, well, let's go with a water company. or the list goes on. This isn't the last challenge that we're going to face by a long shot. There are more to come. So we can take some object lessons from this. And I really think that the POV will sincerely work to figure out something that works better for most of us. Some people still ain't gonna be. I don't know who that is. I have no idea today. What I have told the POV is that provided they deliver a practical, thoughtful solution that takes into account all that's happened here, that takes into account their needs, that takes into account practical ideas of money and operational issues. I've told them I'll stand behind you. In fact, I'll stand in front of you. And we'll make a place that's safe for the folks who need our help in our community. That's what I will do. That's my promise tonight. And what the POV has promised you is that they will operate in good faith to try to respect everything they've heard through this process. I can tell you too, that if you got something better, than A, B, or C, let me know. So I'll let the POV know. And we'll talk about that, if that's what we need to do. We want the best solution. And if the best solution isn't here tonight, let's find it. Let's present it. Let's vet it. Let's move on. Thank you all very much for your sincere efforts here to be neighbors and neighborly, to work together, to understand complex issues, and move the ball forward a little bit at a time. And one more time, I would like to thank my staff, great folks who want to fix stuff, and the good folks at NCBI who show up when you really need them to help us fix stuff. Thanks, Anna.
Okay, just one more little thing. We like to do evaluations. We're not going to do pairs, you guys, so you can go ahead and start. So we really like to know what you thought of this workshop. It's not really a workshop, but what you thought of this community meeting and how we did as facilitators. Did you get what you wanted out of the work, out of the meeting, etc. And so we're handing out forms. If you would just stay for 2 more minutes and fill out that evaluation form, we would really, really appreciate it. And I want to thank you all again for being here and participating.